Those inescapable concepts that always confounds people. How could something be both awesome and horrible at the same time? I borrowed this lens as a display model from my local camera store. I made quite a few videos about it. This is not really about this lens, but about the principle of an awesome yet horrible lens. How is that even possible? This is, by the way, the 105mm f1.4 E-Series Nikkor. This is $2,200 of Chinese-made. Yeah. Now, you'd think they'd make this in Japan. It actually costs probably too prohibitive to make this in Japan. I mean, they make the 35mm 1.4 in Japan. They make the 28mm 1.4 in Japan. They make the 58mm 1.4 in Japan. So the 25, the 58, the 35, yeah, you know, this has to be made in China. It probably actually has to do with the elements and production costs. Anyway, $2,200, absolutely ridiculous. This is a sharp lens stop down if you're at about f2. Actually, it's plenty sharp enough at f1.8. It's actually plenty sharp enough at f1.4. Let me put this away. I was taking some additional test shots to make a demonstration for a future video here in a couple of days on that lens. Really, it's kind of hard to explain. I get people that are so confused. I mean, now, ultimately, and aesthetically, specifically aesthetically, whatever someone wants in their pictures, that's ultimately their choice. We're not talking about existential criteria where, you know, we're calculating the trajectory of something and we actually have to be extremely precise and there's no, you know, one way or the other. It is what it is and it's no other way. In photography, if you want to smear Vaseline on the front of your lens and take a cloudy shot and that ends up being an award-winning photograph, then obviously that is 100% acceptable, and even further than that, it's, you know, it's to be applauded. Whatever you want is whatever you want, but an awesome yet horrible lens like this, a really fast lens, it renders a really, really shallow depth of field. The only problem with this lens, actually, is that it renders a depth of field so shallow and it desaturates the images so bad that the portraits look like the human beings, for example, are cutouts that are pasted onto a fake background. It's got really, 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 not good kind, but the bad swirly bokeh. So if you get some speculars, like some light creeping through the tree leaves behind your subject matter, and that's also, you know, acceptable for, you know, Petzval and some of these other oddball, like Helios lenses. Like, I mean, I love and that's not a sharp lens at all, like the Helios 85mm 1.4, which is a copy of the Biotar 75, yes, 75, f1.5, the Zeiss 85 1.5, excuse me, I said 1.4, the Zeiss, and I got a couple of those lenses. Not a sharp lens, really, really swirly bokeh. The only thing that's sharp is whatever's dead center. Dead center at f1.4. Russian optics, right? But it lends an interesting effect. This lens has an interesting... Now that's a good interesting effect. There is something entirely unpleasing that makes someone feel like they're having a stroke. And that's why this is a wonderful lens that's awful. When you look at an image, and there are many of them out there, if you go on the Flickr page for this stupid lens, if someone has their head cocked slightly one way or the other, you shoot at 1.4, this eye will be, only part of this eye will be in focus, this eye will be totally out of focus, and to the mind, you know, you think that the face is parallel to the plane of the sensor, but it's not, it's slightly one way or the other, or even further, and it really feels like you're having a stroke looking. It's that's like what we call not a pleasurable experience looking at it. Really, aesthetically, there's some things that are just not good, like chopping off someone's forehead, you know. Sometimes it's passable, depends on the composition. You chop someone's forehead off. Being parallel to the plane of focus and yet slightly askew and having one eye totally blurry, it's like, geez, there must be something broken. And no, that's just how that lens renders. The background's desaturated. Every one of these images out of this lens is... The same thing is true, like I said, this video is not about this lens, by the way. And it's an obnoxiously heavy lens. The 200mm f2, I just got done reviewing that. I had it for, I don't know, how long did I have it? I had it for like 2 weeks or so. Used the earlier version. The VR is better, and it's a sharper lens. They improved the sharpness, resolution of the lens. But it's a horrible lens. It's obnoxiously heavy. It is insanely expensive by any measure at $6,000. The 180mm 2.8 renders much better. A far more useful lens is a 300mm 2.8. So if you just look at the lens the way it is, like the 200mm f2, and don't consider the price tag and it's like, yeah, it's an awesome lens. It's really sharp. It's got great VR. But it's not. It's also a horrible lens. It's insanely heavy. It's insanely expensive. There are better options for everything that damn lens does, like the 300 2.8 and the 180mm 2.8 D series AF. So it's an awesome lens. It's just horrible. It's kind of like having what is a craft that is lost? Like basket weaving, you know? I think we got human beings still weave baskets, but let's say you had like some sort of expert from the 18th century in basket weaving, and you brought them forward. They're just a grand master of basket weaving. You know, their skills would be pretty useless, right? Well, they're an awesomely skilled person that is just kind of like a fifth wheel. It's like, well, it's really awesome, but I don't know what I'd do with it. It's really neat, but it doesn't really... But it is another tool. You know, if it's a tool people were asking for... Really, this particular lens, for example, is Nikon's Ego Play. This is the world's fastest 105mm lens. Nikon's really proud of that. They're about to be overthrown by Tamron. It's coming out with a 1.2, I hear. But this lens was really an answer to a question that nobody was asking. And like, well, if that's the case, then what was it? It's an ego play by Nikon to say, we got the world's fastest 105. 105 is a really important focal length for a portraiture, like the 105 f2 DC Nikkor, which will blow the hell out of that lens for portraiture. Micro contrast, depth, especially black and white. By the way, yeah, this lens really sucks butt in micro contrast. For you to render this in black and white, this lens sucks. Sucks. It does have interesting effects, and if those interesting effects, you know, are something that you want, then, you know, by all means, buy the lens. I'm not one to poop over someone's idea. I'm buying any lens. If it renders something that you like, then that's what you need. You know, I'm not one to be a dirty diaper in someone's joy and happiness of photography. I don't want to be that. You know? But this is the hard thing, and I have communicating to people. It's like, well, it's an awesome lens, really sharp. It's got great VR. You say it sucks. You know, what's wrong with you? It's like, well, it can be an awesome lens and suck at the same time. And there's not a contradiction there. The two are not, you know, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, all in the same person. That lens is Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And there are a few others like that, like the 200 f2. So, it's a difficult concept of lenses that I've had difficulty in communicating to people because they just want to jump to conclusions. Oh, that's really sharp lens. It's awesome. How could you say it sucks? So, well, it's because you don't understand what I'm evaluating it upon. Like I said, though, aesthetically, whatever it is that you like, then that's fine. I'm not a wet rain cloud over top of anybody's head for what it is they want, a la lenses. Happy holidays, all that garbage. Thank you so much for watching, and do svidaniya, as the Russians would say. Bye.